Hey everybody, Dave Hagan here. Today we're going to talk about the joy and freedom of an emergency fund. That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Financial Wellness Podcast. We are coming to you today, as always, from Uncle Studios in beautiful downtown Van Nuys, kind of near Hollywood, just outside of L.A. We got a bunch of people in the studio today, so hey, look, it's Brian Reed.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Always fun.
Always.
What's going on new in L.A. or Hollywood? Anything exciting this week?
Star Wars, Disneyland.
Star Wars opened up. Yeah.
Have you seen any of the pictures?
Yeah, blue milk. They sell blue milk. I don't know. It's a thing. Or you can make your own lightsaber for $200. It's like, wow, a couple weeks ago we were talking about needs and wants. Is that a need or a want?
A lightsaber is definitely a need. I need a lightsaber.
You need a $200 custom-built lightsaber.
No, I want it to be a real lightsaber. That's a need.
That would be cool. Or for $25,000, you can build your own droid. You can get your own operating R2-D2.
Oh, all right. Well, there's two needs then.
Well, I guess. Wow. So also in the studio today, hey, we've got a fella named Matt. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Wonderful to be here.
Hey, now, Matt is his real name or maybe or not.
It's my stage name.
Your stage name. I like that.
It's also my real name.
It's kind of funny because Matt and I met about a year ago at a social event, and we discussed some of the interesting things that we were each doing. You know, we were just chitting some chat, and you inevitably start talking about the things that are interesting you. And one of the things that I talked about, of course, is the Financial Wellness Podcast. And then we never talked for a number of months. And then I heard from Matt several months later by email, and it turns out he was listening to the podcast. And I thought, hey, cool, So Matt's a listener and maybe a fan. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, I'm a big fan.
Big fan. Very cool. Well, thanks for coming in. Everybody, it's kind of interesting. I asked Matt, I said, hey, you want to come in? And he asked if I should be talking to his agent.
I don't have an agent.
Or maybe you need an agent, but only in Hollywood.
Wait a minute, you're not union, are you?
No, I'm not union.
We got to.
Only in LA, only in Hollywood, you have to involve the agents. So, how many of our episodes you think you've listened to? We've done about 75.
Oh, I've listened to quite a few, actually. There's always some that resonate with me, and quite frankly, one of the very first ones I heard about an emergency fund was one that I've worked on the most and continue to somewhat focus on. But I've listened to quite a few.
That's good. That's great. You said you like the one talking about the emergency fund. Do we have any stinkers that you could identify?
Well, I don't rush to the mic. I mean, to the radio often or the podcast to listen to financial stuff. So, yeah. But there's a lot of very good things. A lot of things that I should have been doing for quite some time. I'm older in my life, which we can talk about, of course. And have had some. I have gone through some things late in life, mostly all good and mostly all refreshing.
Right.
But. But the one that has resonated and the one that I kind of restarting in a second chapter of life was the emergency fund. I had to start a bit at age 61 from zero again.
Wow.
It's really not zero, but it was very, very close to zero.
Right. Well, and a lot of people are negative. They're underwater. So, there's a lot to be said for zero, everybody, it was funny when Matt just came in, he was taking some pictures of Brian and myself and the mixing board and Scott, and sending him to his girlfriend because he wanted her to know that he wasn't out like having a fun time, that he was actually at the Financial Podcast doing what he's supposed to do.
That's right. Yes.
So sometimes you got to prove that you're not off base, right?
Absolutely.
And we're happy to do it. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your life journey.
So I'm, as I mentioned, I'm 61. I have 5 incredible kids, which I love, but I also blame for everything, including my financial position in life. But they're all through college or out of college, and they're all, many are married and have grandkids. And so late in life, not to make a long story very much longer, but went through a divorce late in life after all the kids left. One of those kind of stories where you stick together through thick and thin because of the kids. And I was very proud and happy to do that, and I'm still very happy of that decision. But then when the last one left, it kind of brought the situation to a head, and that's when we decided to make it final after 37 years and get a divorce.
Wow.
The challenge then became, of course, the literally liquidating everything, every asset we had, because that was how that's what we agreed to do. We didn't really use attorneys. We just agreed to do that.
Right.
And so we liquidated everything, and I had to basically at age 61 start over.
I mean, so you've had assets, you've had real estate, you've had fancy cars,
Yes,
you've had corporate jobs, you've done the whole thing.
Yes.
A lot of ups and downs and back and forths in your life. But the one thing that I remember in initially talking to you was that maybe one of the constants was music.
Yeah.
And that I thought was pretty cool, because I'm totally unmusical, and someone who can like sing or whatever, play a guitar in your case,
Sure.
I always go, wow, that's really cool. Tell me a little bit about that.
So that's always been a constant in my life. As my children are a constant, music has always been a constant.
Right.
And I'm very excited about that. And my hope is I still hope to have a music business one day. I hope to teach music again entirely online as I used to teach. Hope to play in bands again.
Right.
But I played guitar for years. I kind of modeled my life. I'm looking at a picture of Eddie Van Halen, but I modeled my in the studio, but I also modeled my life kind of after Led Zeppelin. So anyway, I've played guitar for years. I still play. Music is inherently a poor world, though, quite frankly.
Right.
So it's not like I could make a living in it, even teaching. But so yeah, I've played for a long time. And
Right.
continue to play every day.
Well, and I think you said something just this morning that you were looking on a go-forward basis to developing a series of guitar lessons
Yes.
online in some way.
Yeah, I hope to have a organization called YB Music. Now that I can, if I ever have a company, I just plugged it.
Got it.
So it's not a company yet, but YB Music will be something where I intend to offer group lesson and individual lessons online, entirely online, which we study patterns for improvisation.
Cool,
Used
cool.
across all musical genres.
Well, when you get that up and going, let's have you back, and we'll talk about some of the things that you're doing to organize and promote a new business. And
I'd love to.
We'll do some plugs and
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good. So, what drew you to the podcast? I mean, a year and a half ago, you and I are just like chatting, and I'm going, "Hey, I do this thing." And what drew you to the podcast?
Well, I think for me, the world is full of opinion, and everybody has an opinion. And I would even tell my children to always have an emergency fund. And, we can have these general conversations around do something. I read about an emergency fund. But the bottom line is I didn't have any facts, quite frankly, to go on. I didn't know where to start. It was kind of very interesting. You get a lot of opinions. People say have an emergency fund, but there's a lot of questions that come up with that. I knew from my own personal experience, I didn't want a fund that was right in my back pocket or in a jar or at a bank right down the street. But quite frankly, what drew me was I didn't really know where to start.
Right.
I didn't have any facts. Again, I'm operating on essentially people's opinions. So what was kind of very fun about that episode that I listened to was I walked away with a set of to-dos, and I immediately did things. I mean, I hadn't ever immediately done anything. I don't know if I've ever immediately done anything. But I went away and I went online. I did quick reviews on banks that are online that offer a return. And I also kind of looked at where did they not, I didn't want one with a branch.
Right.
Because to me, an emergency fund should be, again, it should be in my mom's house and not in my house kind of thing.
Right.
So away from me, basically.
Right.
So I think the value of the show to me was the facts that I got. Rather than an opinion, I got a set of to-dos. I left with a set of to-dos.
Right. Well, and we don't try and make it too precise or too particular. A lot of times we're talking in some generalities, because I think sometimes it can get too particular. Oh, you got to have a 401(b) Roth, with a delimiter fund on the side or something like that, and people go, "Oh, what is that about?" And if we can say generally, "Hey, put some money in the bank," or put some money generally in a retirement account or something like that, that gives somebody something tangible that can become real to them. They can go out and they're excited to do it, Well, how long did it take you to put together this fund?
It didn't take me long. I have had experience with some really minor investing. I would never say I'm an investor. My 401k basically is about $822 right now. So anyway, so that shows you
it's
my
a start.
So my level of investment. So I think when I had some direction from the show, I was able to go out pretty quickly and then make decisions. And then it's when you have something to target and go after, like what's the best savings bank online kind of thing.
Right.
Then the research becomes easy.
Right.
And Ally was something. If I can mention, can I mention Ally?
Well, you can mention whoever you work with.
Okay.
We're not recommending anybody, but
Sure.
you certainly can mention who you work with.
So that had a little bit of a return in it, and limited and almost maybe no risk. I saw and I also liked it because I kind of think of it as I put the money in there, and I put the money that we split up from the divorce. I put my share in there.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I even watch because it's not associated with any kind of stock.
Right.
So
right.
I like that idea that I don't even think of. It's kind of fulfilling the dream I have in an emergency fund, which is it's in there, and as long as it stays in there and I don't need it, then that's where it should stay, and I'm not going to look at it.
I saw someone had a sign, they said, put it where you can't find it. I don't know. I don't know what they were talking about, but I think it was about a bank account and savings or something. I don't know. But, that's kind of, an interesting analysis. What struck me and what caused me to really think about asking you to come on the show is that you talked about the absolute freedom and joy and exhilaration of having an emergency fund. And I really never thought about it that way. To me, it's just like a step. It's another thing I got to put some money aside. Yeah, I got to get some rate of return. I got to figure out how to do it. But you talked about the joy and freedom, and I went, God, I never really thought about it that way. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting. So I didn't finish my degree. Again, I blame my children. I love my children. I blame my children. And I had children fairly early in life. We were married at 21 and she was 18. And we were married very early, and I had to work basically. So a single income, and I had to go out and work for a living. So I never saved much, and I'm not really good at, if there's a grill on sale, even though I don't need a grill and I don't grill, I'm going to go buy the grill. So I'm not really good at saving money to begin with. And I'm also in sales and marketing, which was kind of maybe a natural place for me to go. It has a lot of potential, has a lot of risk, but a lot of potential income in sales and marketing. But I have been laid off 3 and 4 times in 33 years. So it's been abrupt. I hate to say it, I go to sleep some nights not, very worried about my job, even on a very, very new job. I've had a position that lasted 7 weeks, and I've had a position that lasts 5+ years. So in my world, it's a performance-based world, almost like maybe sports to some extent. So when you're able to save anything, to me, and when I finally put that nest egg away, and I do look at it using various tools, it's comfort. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, it's become the focus for me because I don't want just 3 months there. I want 6 months there, and then eventually I want a year there. And I put more time in investing in that and thinking about that. And as I tell my kids, the more you have in savings, the more if something abrupt happens, I've been with companies that are gone. They're completely off the map now. They were $3 billion companies with 30,000 employees, and they're gone. Yeah. So that was in the 80s, and those IT companies are now gone.
Wow.
So we've had that. I've had that happen. I've seen that happen abruptly. And so to me, the only thing I can do is kind of protect myself, so to speak.
And it helps you sleep better at night.
It helps me sleep much better. It doesn't help me get along with my boss any better, but it does help me. It does help me sleep a whole bunch better.
And another thing that I was just thinking about, listening to you talk about this, when we're younger, it's like next year is always a little better, a little bigger, a little more, a little this or that. But when you start to roll into middle age, a lot of people start to experience ups and downs, and there's ups, there's downs. Some years you're doing great, some years you're not. And you need to hold something back a little bit from the great years, so the bad years aren't quite as lean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, back and forth. I was looking at a survey that was reported on by Forbes magazine, and it was a survey done by Career Builder, and they found that almost 80% of U.S. workers live paycheck to paycheck. And when we had that government shutdown last year, all the government workers were saying that they didn't have the ability to pay their bills after like 6 weeks. And they're going, we're going to have to borrow money and this and that. And Brian and I were going, wow, where's the emergency fund? But the survey indicates that people don't have an emergency fund, and they're so financially terminal so quick. Yeah. And yet I hear you talking about you don't worry about that anymore.
Well, I certainly, yes, it feels very comforting to have something like that and to leave it alone and not talk about it and to know it's a little bit harder to get to. So when I want to take all the kids, I have 5 kids and 5 grandkids, and I want to take them all to Disneyland, maybe I will not use the emergency fund to do that. So
absolutely resist.
Yes, I'm going to resist.
Very cool.
Maybe we'll just hop the fence or something, but no, I wouldn't do that. But no, it is very comforting. And again, to me, I do intend to get back, of course, into the 401k as the divorce settles and gets through all that process still, which is ongoing, but very, very near its completion. And I do intend to do that. But I found that the first step for kind of comfort and happiness and joy and freedom was the emergency fund. To me, I'm glad I focused on that. I'm glad I listened to your show. I'm glad I had steps to walk away from that show immediately to do something, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, very cool, very cool.
Well done.
So you're not, you're not part of this group of people, majority of the people in the United States anymore that are paycheck to paycheck. And you talk about this, being so exhilarating. Tell us a little bit about the emotion of that. What's that like?
Well, I think part of it is just a learning lesson. We all want our, again, I mentioned my children, but you want your children to learn is that, going to spend a few $100 on something and rather than saving first. So I think for me, the goal it's at a later stage in life, and that's why I listen to the shows. I felt like I didn't have any advice, or when you don't have a lot of cash in your pocket, it's often hard to find someone to chat with you about your finances. Mm-hmm. I have friends who are stockbrokers, and they'll tell me, hey, you need to walk in with a certain amount of money, and I can help you, but I can't help you if you don't walk in with a certain amount of money, which is, I understand that, I get that. But at the same time, I think a lot of us, as you're mentioning in your report, 70%, I think a lot of us need just kind of good, sound assistance. We're going to follow it, but we need a place to start. So that's what I began to do after listening, and now I'm a little more focused on making sure a little bit of the cash that comes in from each paycheck goes to this fund. Not only did I have the emergency fund, but I also opened at the same location at the same bank a savings fund.
Right.
And that I can put a little more into.
Right.
And again, I'm not talking about large sums of dough. I'm talking about or cash. I'm just talking about a little bit every check.
Yeah, it's not important the amount per se. It's the habit is more important. Yeah. And what I think I hear you saying is you're talking about the joy or the emotion involved. And I've heard lots of people say that financial wellness is less about book knowledge and more about just the emotional joy of being on that path.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that there's going to be emotional joy or excitement from other elements that we talk about in the Financial Wellness Podcast, things that are going to give you joy and happiness? Well,
again, I certainly look forward to the kind of the next step. So my intent is to have the emergency fund be at least a year of income. That's kind
smart.
of what
that's more than most, but that's smart.
Because I just felt like, as I used to tell, again, these children of mine,
right?
We'll probably have to have them on the show now that I've I'll have to pay them money or something.
Are they getting royalties? Do they have agents?
They probably do have agents.
What's going on here?
Well, there's only one in Hollywood. The rest are throughout the world, or Northern California at least. But
Brian and I don't want to have to give up points, right, Brian?
Right. Nothing on the back end is going to these kids.
Nothing on the back end. No way, man.
So it's the same thing I've mentioned to them, is that the more savings you have in this kind of emergency fund, of course, then if something does happen, like a job loss, which happens to a lot of folk, it'd be interesting
all
to
the
know.
Time?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many folks it actually happens to on a monthly or yearly basis. But the only thing you have to rely on, it's really hard to rely on family when your income is high or your bills are high every month. So you have to have this emergency fund. And of course, the longer that it is, the more time and more it takes away some of the stress of job searching and whatnot. So the next step for me is the next phase of a good sound plan that I've heard you mention on your show. And to me, that is the retirement aspect.
Right.
The next aspect. I'll get to the will next, probably third down the line, but
the other stuff, it'll all happen. It'll all happen in time,
Yeah.
I remember years ago they were talking to, I think his name was Jim Fix, and he wrote the Book of Running. This is a big deal back, several years ago. And someone asked him, what's the hardest part of running? And he thought for a minute, and he says, the first step. And I think it's the same way with, with financial wellness. The first step is the hardest. And, even if it's $1 or $2, those first couple of bucks are tough. And then you start to want more. And I think I heard you just say that. I want more. I want 6 months. I want 9 months. I want 12 months in my retirement. And then I want the next step. And you start getting emotionally invested in that. And then it's very satisfying. Then it's very gratifying. It's not like, oh, I got to save some money. It's like, yeah, I want to deploy my capital in a better way. I was thinking about this. What about, do you think that there will be joy? And I don't know if you own your car or not, but wouldn't there be joy in having a fully paid for car?
Well, that was actually another part that I did.
Seriously?
I didn't even mention that in my emergency fund, but not only did I
swear to our listeners, we didn't talk about this ahead of time.
Didn't.
We did not. Matt walked in and we says, let's go. Matt and Brian shook hands and off we went. Wow, really? Okay, tell me about that.
Well, so that's just trying to get out of debt, any kind of that debt, and of course a car payment beyond rent or house payments. I'm now renter. I'm not a homeowner anymore, so I'm a renter.
Right.
But one of the very first things I took care of, because I debated having a payment, the value, was there any value at all in having a payment? And then of course the conclusion was there is no value in really having a payment, a car payment, for me anyway.
Right.
So I just paid that off. I took the money out of the settlement. And I paid that off before I started the emergency fund.
Okay.
Or almost hand in hand with the two. So, so that's fully paid off now.
I like that.
Yeah. And that gives me the freedom to put more Led Zeppelin stickers, maybe a Megadeth and a George Strait sticker on it, because he's a pretty good musician too.
Once a musician, always a musician, huh? Brian, you've known musicians in the past. You got any questions for Matt?
Nothing that we can probably actually ask or he can say on the podcast. Again, these are musicians.
He's a musician. It was interesting. I come in and we're getting ready for the podcast, and Uncle Studios is not only do they do podcasts, but they also rehearse and record rock and roll bands. Scott tells me that Rod Stewart's been here and other people over the years, and I come in and we're all about the business, and I look around and there's like speakers and drums, whatever means nothing to me. But Matt, I saw you walk in the room and your eyes lit up and you're going, oh, there's a Marshall. That's really cool. I'm going, I don't know. It's a thing with buttons on it.
There's some really, really nice things in here to use. We could set up our own gig next time. Maybe.
We could play some music.
Play some Rush or something.
Have you talked to your kids about the savings account?
Ooh, good question.
It's funny. I have not, and part of it is that it's not that I've avoided the subject, but they're actually probably a little better off than I am, quite frankly. They're all 4 of the 5 are graduates of Berkeley and San Diego State and whatnot, and they seem to be doing better financially than I have ever been. Again, I blame them; it's all their fault. But none of them have 5 kids; they all have a couple. But no, I haven't really brought it up. Maybe part of that is just we've talked about it so much. I kind of feel like they expect me to have it. So I thought, if I bring it up now, they might think, well, I thought you've had it the whole time. But anyway, so no, I haven't really spoken about it. We have talked about the principles, not my specific account. No, I have not brought that up, but the principles of it, yes, we have.
Of course, if they, know that you don't got like piles of dough and assets and retirement accounts, they might not even call you as much,
No.
You never know. Of course, you don't have to worry about them with a sharp knife in their back pocket either.
Yeah. Well, I think they already know who gets, what guitar and what surfboard.
Well,
it's pretty much in that order.
Those are the important assets.
Those are the important those are the assets.
Those are the legacy items, right? No, and I think that's important, really important. Well, good stuff. What are some takeaways that we can take away from this show, Brian? What do you think? How about first and foremost?
People really do listen to us.
They do. Sometimes, we're sitting in the recording studio. It's kind of dark sometimes, and you kind of wonder. And I do follow the stats a little bit. But people listen to the show. Pretty cool, Number 2, it occurred to me that Matt, who's primarily a musician, not a financial type, but he's been empowered. I mean, regular people, everyday people can do this stuff. And it's not that hard. It's not that crazy. But the hardest thing is, the first step. Maybe another thing, life is full of ups and downs and back and forth. And I guess all that matters is you finish on a high note. Henry Ford was quoted as saying, "You only have to be right the last time." Right. And he died pretty well off, and it's never too late. It's never too late to get on a path to get where you want to be. And then maybe also life is, what you make and how you look at it. Here I was looking at an emergency fund is kind of a thing you got to do, a step to get to the next step. And you're talking about it not being a chore, but, an extreme joy. Yeah. And I don't know, that's pretty cool.
Yep. Peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially in this crazy world. It used to be you graduate from school, you pick a company, you work for them for 30 years, they give you a pension and a watch, and you're done. It was like that. Now, nobody hardly goes 30 years. People, 2-3 companies, they get laid off, they get fired, they get whatever. Companies go out of business. The executives get arrested for absconding all the money, or, who knows what happened. But no one, hardly anyone, works for the same company anymore. So really interesting stuff. So, wow, Matt, big fan, listener. Appreciate you coming in, spending some time with us, getting to meet us. And it's really been an honor to have you here.
Great.
Yeah, very
thank you
cool,
very much for having me.
And interesting stuff, important stuff, I think that the listeners can take away and listen to and, kind of spread that experience and that knowledge around a little bit. And coming from a guy who's primarily a musician. Very cool. Very, very cool,
And folks, there really is there's like a drum set right over here. I'm going to go play it.
Oh, no.
There is. Yeah, we don't make this stuff up, Too funny. So anyway, maybe you get that business online up and running, come back, let's talk about it some more, and we'll touch base, how your emergency fund's doing. Oh, wait a minute. Now everyone knows that you're like enhancing the size of your emergency fund. No pressure.
All right, that's right. I'm going to spend it on that grill.
I like it. Well, that's all the time we got today, but here's some stuff we're working on for a couple episodes from now, maybe even next week. We're going to finally bring out the It's My Money concept. I've been thinking about it and kind of fleshing it out for quite a period of time. We're going to reveal that next week. Tune in. I think that you'll find it very interesting. But that's a wrap. That's all the time we got today. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.